Thank you for being with us today. My name is David Douglas. Today we're going to be continuing with the journey concerning the Douglas family. And I'm calling this channel as far as the Douglas Family History YouTube channel. So today we're going to be talking about who I feel like have been a very, I reckon, important person in history, a very well-known person in history. In fact, actually two of them, two men. Their names, what you said, been recorded in history as being great men of what we may say today, great men of renown. Going to be talking about Charlemagne, Emperor Charlemagne, and King Alfred the Great of England, and how that they are connected into the Douglas family tree. I believe my paper trail has led me here. So if you have followed this channel, and we have other videos on this Douglas Family History YouTube channel, and you can look them up, kind of follow us from where we started to where we are now. So again, thank you for tuning in. Maybe, give us a thumbs up. We'd love to hear from you. If you got a comment, you got any questions, please, don't hesitate as far as to ask. Like I said, make some comments. Our comments are open. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. So today, again, we're going to be talking about Charlemagne, Emperor Charlemagne, and King Alfred the Great of England, and how that they are connected with the Douglas family tree. So, in this video, as I said, I'm going to be talking about how Charlemagne and King Alfred of England is connected, to this Douglas family. And I want to start at the top of this tree with Charlemagne. He was born April the 2nd in the year 747. Pretty well they have determined close to that year. Pretty well they knew that he was born April the 2nd, but the year has been debatable. So we're going to kind of stick with the year 747. And his father was Pippin III, who they called the Short. And his birth name was Charles I. He would even be later called Charles the Great. And yet, we know him as Charlemagne. Charles the Magnificent. Charlemagne. He was king of the Franks, king of the Lombards, and the first emperor of the Roman. And this would later be called, first emperor of the Romans, which, would be later called, the Holy Roman Empire. So he was the first emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. The Pope crowned him as far as that. Emperor Charlemagne would marry Hildegard of Winskov, and their son was Emperor Louis I the Pious. Louis I the Pious married Judith of Bavaria. And I'm going to be going down in this tree. Louis I the Pious married Judith of Bavaria, and their son was actually Charles II, King of France. Charles II married Richhild of Provence, and their child was a girl named Judith. They put the title Carolingian, and she married Baldwin I, who they called Iron Arm, and he was the Count of Flanders. And they had a son named Baldwin II, the Bald, Count of Flanders. And he married Ethelred of Wessex, otherwise of Wessex, England. And she was the daughter of King Alfred the Great, King of England. And this is where that Alfred the Great comes into this tree through his daughter, Ethelred, marrying Baldwin II, one of the counts of Flanders. So Ethelred was the daughter, like I said, of King Alfred the Great, King of England. Baldwin II and Ethelred of Wessex had a son named Arnulf the Great, Count of Flanders. Now, this House of Flanders was actually a very powerful family. You know, there in the region of northern Belgium. And it even expanded into the northwest corner of France. In fact, and I don't know if they still call it that today, I seen an old map, that top right-hand corner of France, they even called it the County of Flanders. I reckon so it was so close to Flanders. So, their son was Arnulf the Great, Count of Flanders, and he married Adela of Vermidus. And they had a daughter named Ethelred the Flandry, or otherwise, or Flanders. She was from Flanders, Ethelred. And when this man that we talked about earlier in one of our videos, Siegfried the Dane, the first Count of Gwens, when he came with his Vikings and seized the area of Gwens, France, and this is where the Baldwins stretched their, I reckon, domain and their rule into that northern part of France. But yet Siegfried came there and seized one of the area called Gwens, there in Gwens, France. But yet during this time he fell in love with Ethelred of Flanders. So, and right here I am going to continue with this tree, family tree, and show you that it goes down actually to William the Douglas. Otherwise, the first one to take on the Douglas name. First one we have in record. So, looking back to Charlemagne and how all these families began to connect to each other, it was not always as far as, that way. Siegfried the Dane actually descended and came from the bloodline, and there is a book and different records that will state this, that he descended from Wittikin, king of Saxony, or what you would even say, king of Saxon. Some called him even the Duke of Saxony. Otherwise, this was an area of Lower Saxony, Germany. Wittikin, and I'm going to call him, and even others have, king of Saxony, was actually at one time the arch enemy, or what you would even say, the nemesis of Emperor Charlemagne. They were enemies against each other. Wittikin even led a rebellion against Charlemagne and his army around the year 777. And after this certain rebellion, this battle, war, Wittikin fled actually into Denmark after he rebelled again in 778. That was the year he was defeated by Charlemagne. So he fled to Denmark, where the Danes were, where the Vikings were. And while in Denmark, and he was there for a while, he married a woman named Jiva, the sister of Sigurd, or some may say Siegfried, who was the first Viking king of Hathabu, Denmark. So this is probably even where Siegfried the Dane, who was actually the son of Theodoric, who was actually the Count of Ringelheim, and his wife was actually the daughter of Godfried, who was the Duke of Frisia, which is there in the Netherlands where the Dutch people are today. And Godfried, Duke of Frisia, his father was actually Harold Clack Halfdanison, who was actually there even a king in Denmark, a Viking king. So possibly Siegfried the Dane, Theodoric and his wife possibly named him after Jiva's brother, who was named Siegfried, the first Viking king of Hathabu, Denmark. So Wittikin, when we look at it, is actually the great-great-grandfather of Theodoric of Ringelheim. They even called him Diedrich. And he married Reginhild of de Friesland. And like I said, she was the daughter of Godfried, Duke of Frisia, and the granddaughter of Harold Clack Halfdanison, a Viking king. So this is where Siegfried gets the nickname the Dane, because he had Viking blood in him, DNA, so to speak. Not only did he descend from Wittikin, king of the Saxons, he also descended from Harold Clack and even others who was kings, Viking kings in Denmark. Theodoric and Reginhild had several children, and one of them, as I said earlier, was Siegfried the Dane, the first Count of Gwens. They had a daughter named Frederin de Ringelheim. She married Charles III. Now get this, nicknamed the Simple, and he was king of France. And he was the great-great-grandson of Emperor Charlemagne. And it is amazing to me, just thinking about it, that these two families, the descendants of Wittikin and the descendants of Charlemagne, Wittikin and Charlemagne was actually enemies, but now they have become family. So, I mean, it's amazing. And a lot of time when they made peace back then, they married into those families, kind of to keep peace. So, now, they are united by marriage, and like I said, they become families. You know, Charlemagne's family and Wittikin's family, now they are united now. Let me recap where I left off at the top of the list, where we had Charlemagne, who had a son named Louis the Pious, and he had a son named Charles II, King of France, and he had a daughter named Judith Carolingian, who married Baldwin I, Count of Flanders. And they had a son named Baldwin II, Count of Flanders. And then he had a son named Arnulf the Great, Count of Flanders. And he had a daughter named Ethelrude of Flanders. And then she married Siegfried the Dane, the first Count of Gwens. And they had a son named Ardulf de Gwens, the second Count of Gwens. Ardulf de Gwens, when I'm saying de Gwens, they were of Gwens, from that area. He married Mathilda of Boulogne, and that is in France. And they had a son named, they had several children, but the main one that I want to talk about is Raoul. de Guines, the third Count of Guines. And he married Rosella de St. Pol. And here it is where I will try to slow down a little bit and explain. Like I said, they had several children. One was actually the fourth Count of Guines, and his name was Eustace. Eustace, you might want to say Eustace. And he was the oldest son, so he got the title as Count of Guines. And they had other sons. Some researchers has placed his daughter, and a lot of them has, as Heloise de Guines. And I agree with these researchers. With my research, it just lines up with the way that I see it. And maybe some others may not. And I know that there's some that has Heloise de Guines as the daughter of Siegfried the Dane. But I believe he was too old, would have been too old, and he died early, actually before she was born. And sometime they would actually put her birth year actually before he was born. But yet she had children on up there, as far as around right before the year, 1000, around, 990, so to speak. Or not 990, but actually on really close to the year, 1000. So she would have been too old to have children. The way I look at it is she would have been Siegfried the Dane's daughter. I believe that, like I said, it goes back that she was Raoul de Guines, actually the third Count of Guines. So, and they also had a son, as far as Heloise de Guines. She had a son named Raoul. That is the same name as Ralph today. And one named Roger. And I know they had other children, Odo and Gilbert. And I believe she named him Roger because her father, Raoul, the third Count of Guines, had a brother named Roger who died while he was a child. I believe this shows that Heloise de Guines is Raoul, the third Count of Guines' daughter. There are also several researchers that place Heloise de Guines as the sister of Archibald, the Viscount of Rouen. Both of these, Archibald and Heloise, the first son that they had, the eldest son, they named Gilbert. And these two families, the families of Heloise and Archibald, were close to each other. And even some of the lands around Rouen, which almost was like a capital, of Normandy. And I think that's where Rollo, the Viking, who actually established, that part of what we call Normandy, which means, that there was people of the Norman descent. They came, from Scandinavia. So Heloise and Archibald, their lands even joined together in this area. And you can find this in some of the medieval Normandy charters dated in the 11th century. Now, let's look at Archibald, Viscount of Rouen. We're going down the family tree, started at Charlemagne. And now, let's look at Archibald, Viscount of Rouen. He had a son named Archibald. And this Archibald was seen recorded in one of these charters, Normandy charters. And it was dated 1067. Get that date. And it was talking about, him and some land as far as the land deal, and him setting out overseas. This charter was witnessed, get this, by William the Conqueror. This Archibald's family was a big part of the ducal court of Normandy. They served, I believe, under William the Conqueror's father, Robert, and even sometimes under, William the Conqueror. So, this took place actually after the Battle of Hastings, which took place in 1066, when William the Conqueror defeated that King of England and then claimed and had himself crowned as King of England. When William the Conqueror defeated at that time, like I said, the King of England, he became the King of England at that time. And then around 1067, or somewhere maybe about the first part of the year 1068, William the Conqueror's wife, Matilda of Flanders, sailed to England as England's queen. And it has been said that Archibald, Viscount of Rohan's son, who was also Archibald, accompanied and went on that voyage with Matilda to England to be with her husband. At that time, William the Conqueror, that time he was king over England. So Matilda of Flanders, the wife of William the Conqueror, was going to also, she was going to be queen of England. So after arriving in England, Archibald, the son of the Viscount Archibald, he became a landowner in England. And his name appears in a land record book called the Domesday Book, and it was completed around 1086. And Archibald, son of the Viscount Archibald, his name appears as owning several land holdings. He was the first one, now get this, to take on the surname Le Fleming, which means he and his family came from Flanders and was speaking the Flemish language. Archibald Le Fleming had 3 sons, and one of them was named William Le Fleming, born around 1074 in Devonshire, England. He married, and I'm going with the family tree, he married Lady Ada Rummaging. They had a son named Sir Michael Le Fleming, born 1095 in Beckernet, Cumberland, England. And his wife is unknown at this time. They had a son named Theobald Le Fleming, who was born 1120 in Alderman Manor, Lancashire, England. And his son, according to several researchers, and even in my own family research, he had a son named William de Douglas. He was William, the first Lord of Douglas. And he was born 1146 in Lanarkshire, Scotland. Theobald Le Fleming had received a land patent not too far from the modern-day village of Douglas, Scotland, in Lanarkshire, in 1147. And get this, this is the same land William de Douglas inherited. In this area, there is a small river called the Douglas Waters. The name Douglas comes from a Gaelic term, Dubglas, which means dark stream. William de Douglas was the first one in recorded history, as I said earlier, to take on the Douglas surname. So this is how that I connect Emperor Charlemagne and King Alfred the Great of England with this certain Douglas clan. William de Douglas, descendants, even settled in an area called Queensberry, Drumlanrig, Scotland. I have taken a Y-DNA test, which have taken my Douglas male bloodline. That's the only way to get the Y-DNA, and it's through the male bloodline, which has taken my male bloodline to the Queensberry, Drumlanrig, Scotland, Douglas clan. So I believe that my paper trail and my Y-DNA is matching up with this family tree that I have put together. There is a little saying about the Douglas family that says, men have seen the stream, but what eye ever beheld the source? If you would like even further information about, this certain Douglas family tree, those that may be listening, I reckon interested, in their family tree. You may not have started, with my certain ancestor, but you may come into this tree at a certain point. So if you would like to even know further, you can go, and I've got a family website called Dark Stream, The Douglas Family Story. All you have to do is just Google Dark Stream at Wix site, and that's W-I-X-S-I-T. Dark Stream at Wix site. And you should be able, as far as to find it, and go on there, and I pretty well have the same information that I just gave you. So again, subscribe to this YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, make a comment, and keep listening, keep watching. We're going to try to put, more videos. We already have, several on here. Just look them up, enjoy them. Hopefully it will help you, and have a good day.